Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is Coach's Corner. Now, I'm going to get this right, and I'm going to go in counterclockwise order on my screen. Dr. Chaz Austin, Mary Cannon, and Nick Palumbo. How are you all doing today?
Fine.
Well, good. I'm
Real
glad to hear
well.
that. So, just as a curiosity, Dr. Chaz, I know that you're out west. You're out in California, right?
In LA, yes.
In LA. And Mary and Nick, where do you two reside?
I am in Rochester, New York.
Cool.
Um, and I think Nick is as well. We met when we were both working at SUNY Geneseo, which is a premier 4-year liberal arts public university, which is probably 45 minutes south of Rochester and probably an hour south of Buffalo and Syracuse. So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, it's good to have all three of you on the show. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. And I know Dr. Chaz is just itching to tell me the backstory. So what's going on, Dr. Chaz?
So, meeting Mary and Nick was a dream come true for me, truly. I wrote my dissertation in 2000. It was published in 2011. And the heart of the dissertation was that we need to train people for the workforce, starting day one in college, and make courses mandatory, make it a program so that we're preparing people once they graduate or even before they graduate to know how to navigate and be successful in the workplace. And my dream was to have it go nationwide, that it be mandatory in every college and university in the country. What I needed was a test school, somebody with the guts to step up and say, we like this idea, we're going to try it out. And I've been searching since then, 12 years, to find that school. Mary and I connected on LinkedIn, and to my happy wonder and surprise, she and Nick had already been doing this for almost 4 years, and they have the data to prove it. So I got my test results without even knowing that someone was doing it, which were these wonderful folks. So that's what happened, and now we have proof of concept and can go to other universities and not say, hey, this guy has some nice ideas in his dissertation. No, it's already been done. Here's proven results and data that this works. So it worked at State University of New York, where Mary and Nick are. It can work for your school as well.
Well, before I get into Mary's and Nick's conversation, Dr. Chaz, just briefly talk to me about what your dissertation was all about without going through all the nicks and pieces of it. What's it about?
Basically, the idea is that we're not training college students for the workforce. It's still rooted in the early 20th century, where we're giving them busy work, teaching to the test, memorization, things they won't need when they're out there, a lot of theory. But the practical stuff, how to monetize their education, how to have what they learn be of value to people, to the public, to make a difference in the world. How do they do that? How do they get from point A to point B? That's missing. So you get college students who graduate and they have $100,000 in debt, and they have no idea how to find a job or even what they want to do. So this was in order to correct it. You also have parents who are very upset. I spent $100,000. I've got all this debt, and my kid can't find a job. What are you folks doing there at the university? What is it? Volleyball? What's going on? And now what we have is proof that this program will allow parents to get a return on their investment. So if you go to a school, as we'll start getting schools to adapt this, the parents are going to say, this works. My kid's going to have a job. This is terrific. Sign me up. So it's a brand differentiator from one school to another. Our school has it. The school down the road does not. I'm going with school A because they can properly prepare my kid for the working world.
So, Mary, was that your theory going into, I guess, 4 years ago when you put this pilot program into action, or how does what Dr. Chaz just said connect with what you've done?
Well, interestingly enough, so when I started at SUNY Geneseo, State University of New York of Geneseo, I was hired as a career coach for the School of Business. And after starting, Dean Zuckerman, the dean of the School of Business, invited me to participate on a committee called Student Services Committee, which was run by Dr. Chen, an assistant professor within the school. And one of the first conversations was, we have a required professional development workshop series offering 8 or 9 different workshops, and we're not getting the results that we would expect, both from student feedback on the actual program, but also employment outcomes. And so the request that came to me was redesign this so that it works.
Wait. Somebody told you to step it up, basically?
Yep. Yes.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we hired you. This program's in place. It's not getting the intended results. Redesign it. So that's right up my alley. So my background is in teaching and administration, and it was clear to me as a teacher that often the content drove the instructional design. So if you're teaching accounting, you teach a bit differently than an entrepreneurial course. So I was searching for research because career development was somewhat new to me per se. I was trying to find research that would best articulate advice or insight as it relates to how to teach an effective career course. What instructional design should I be looking for? What's important? And it was then that I stumbled upon Dr. Chaz Austin's dissertation, which when we met for dinner a few weeks ago, I carried out with me to LA. It's dog-eared and there's Post-it notes, and I referenced it numerous times, and it really became sort of the go-to. I shared his research with everyone on our School of Business committee, with multiple alumni, certainly with the dean. I know that I shared it with Nick and our director at the time, Jesse Stack Lombardo, and there was a lot of conversation. We all sort of read that as a starting point, and learned, very well articulated. I have some of his favorite quotes. Can I read you 2 or 3 from page 34 and 36 that I constantly go back to? So the idea behind successful career workshops is based in experiential learning. And he defines that as creating meaning from direct experience and a reflection on doing, as opposed to rote learning. So also a quote, an effective experiential facilitator is able to immerse participants in the learning environment, stimulating their imagination and encouraging students to gain new knowledge from their peers and their environment. It is based on, and Nick has heard this so often, participation and practice. So there was a similar theme throughout his entire dissertation, and it became really clear that these workshops needed to take place in person. I needed to scaffold the learning. Often we had students who joined us that didn't know each other, and we were asking them to share information about themselves, create elevator pitches. So we thought a lot about how to tap into this experiential aspect, and that became the foundation for our work and design and learning objectives, and then began working really closely with Nick early on, almost immediately, to determine if the direction that we would launch and redesign was going to be successful. So it has been my pleasure to work with Nick. He's
Well,
a
let me jump in real quick,
genius.
if it's okay, Mary, because I want to get into some of the pieces of what you're actually doing, but I want to hear Nick's part of the story. So I want to get him into the conversation. How do you fit into this conversation, Nick? What's your part?
Yeah, so I came to the college in 2018, and my primary responsibility is overseeing our undergraduate leadership programming at the college. At that time, I was approached by the School of Business in terms of trying to think about ways that we could incorporate more intentionally their professional development requirements within the sort of architecture of the Gold program, which is an undergraduate leadership program. It's free, it's open to all students at the college, and it comprises of 1 hour workshops on about 9 or so different topics. There's been some variation over time. Some are specific to leadership, others are more topical in nature, but have an undergirding theme of leadership. So for instance, like sustainability and leadership, we have an entire track that students can do with that. Equity-minded leadership, we have a track that students can do within that. So we thought, well, why couldn't we just create a track that would be specific to the School of Business Professional Development program? And we started running with it, and then Mary was on board at that point and was sort of reconceptualizing the curriculum, and as a sort of an assessment guy, got pulled in early on in the sort of definition of how we'd go about doing that and instantiation within our processes.
So out of curiosity, Nick, did you read his dissertation? Because Mary did probably several times.
I did not read the dissertation. However, I was iteratively aware of how the items were designed based on the findings of the dissertation, and that level of instantiation was important to me.
Cool. So what are the pieces that make this work? Can we talk about that? Who wants to talk about it first? Because Dr. Chaz, it's your work, but Mary put it into practice. Mary made it happen. And so
Yes,
I applaud both of you. And of course, the administration and I forget the name of the college that this is running or piloted in, forgive me, because they believed in your work and what you thought of his work. So what are the pieces? What makes this happen?
Well, I think
Or is that proprietary? You can't tell me.
No. I
okay.
think so I brought gosh, 7 or 8 years of teaching experience and years of administration and education. So I understood sort of how to design new programs and workshops, but I tapped into Dr. Chaz's research to really help us fine-tune and ensure that we were on the right path, because his years of experience in this field was most appreciated. I did not bring years of experience in career design. So not only did I learn from his dissertation and his insight, but also the years of experience. But able to work with Nick, we created, I think within the first few months, a 7-question assessment that I will let Nick talk about, but it is providing immediate feedback, or the students before they could get credit for the workshop, they had to answer this 7-question assessment, which allowed us to begin to gather data to better understand if we were successful or not. So we have this sort of bucket of data, which is student feedback with our 7 questions. And I'll let Nick talk about that. And then we also were measuring graduate outcomes. So I was very aware of the outcomes of our accounting, business admin, and econ students before I started the redesign. And it was the expectation of the team I was working with that those would improve. And now 4 or 5 years later, we had an immediate improvement, and then we met some consistency. The class of 2021, within 6 or 7 months from graduation, 100% of our accounting students had work in their field or in full-time educational programs. 94% of our business admin students were also successful, and 100% of our econ students. So, that's a combination of some spectacular faculty and leadership within the School of Business and career design and at Geneseo to begin with to support this program. So there were a lot of collaborative conversations with alumni. We were constantly improving it as the world of work went through a wild COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, introduction to applicant tracking systems. Handshake disrupted the entire recruiting process. So in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been a wild ride, of which we kept the instructional design the same. We kept our learning objectives the same, and we continue to improve and update the content based on conversations with recruiters, HR directors, and alumni. So there was every 3 or 4 months, I was updating the workshops to ensure that we were providing value from a student lens.
So can Nick talk about what that assessment looks like and how it tracks the data? Just a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So the 7-item questionnaire assesses career development in terms of the students' perceptions that they were able to advance or gain in their own career development. It also looks at the knowledge within that particular topic that they experienced. It also assesses their perceptions of the length of the event, the extent to which they felt like they could participate, how organized they felt the event was, as well as the presenter's knowledge. We also did ask a question around diversity and inclusion. Really, was the sort of framework of this workshop that you experienced open to diversity and inclusion, belonging, and equity-related topics, themes, and issues? The way in which we assess for it is pretty simple. Students at the college all have a gold account, and that's what they use to sign up for these workshops. At the end of each workshop, if they're accredited as attending, they get pinged with a little notification to take a post-workshop survey. They fill out that survey, and then I pull that data, analyze it, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it, but that's sort of the gist of it.
Cool. So I want to add to this conversation because I'm a doctor too, Dr. Chaz, and actually did my dissertation on the disconnect between career services and academia. And this was a year before you actually published, I published. And so
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of and I did a Delphi study. So a lot of what I was finding was there wasn't enough practical application of the things people were studying in college in order to successfully make that transition out of college. And so from what you found and what I found, now I wish I was part of your group.
It's, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, what I think I found, what my dissertation found definitely supports, but you took it one step further, is you're developing a model for change. Whereas I was just looking for, why isn't this occurring? Why are 4-year, students, graduating, maybe not even in 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and still scratching their head, what am I to do with my life now? With, as you said, debt.
There are a couple of reasons for that. To answer that, academia is notoriously conservative. That's one thing. So we already have a career services department, and we give them resume templates and leads to alumni, and we're done. That's it.
And that was pretty much it. Yeah,
we're not a vocational school. That's beneath us. Yeah, but the pressure now from the marketplace and parents being upset about, what are my students doing? What are my kids doing here? It's going to force schools to really take note about this and adapt their programs and include either courses or workshops, so that we're properly preparing these people so they don't fall off the cliff once they graduate. And I've got a piece of paper in debt, and I have no way to make any money. What's going on? Why did I do this? So yeah, interesting that it all ties together. And I want to add that data may not be sexy to some people, but to the audience we're going after, which are decision makers at colleges and universities, this is the proof. These are the hard numbers as to the success that they had at SUNY Geneseo, and that it can be replicated and customized for whatever a particular college or university might need.
So how do you go about doing that at this point? Are you now in the phase that you're knocking on the doors of other universities, colleges, and say, hey, this is, or how do you approach those conversations?
Well, we do podcasts like yours.
One. What else do you do?
We'll start to get press. I've hit up every colleague I have who went to college, and I've asked for introductions. And one of my good friends, actually just right before the podcast, he contacted someone at his alma mater and they're interested. So we're pursuing that. Now we've got what we need to close the deal.
Mary, Nick, what are your roles now moving forward? Because there are lots of colleges and universities out there that don't know about what you've done. And so how do you get the word out outside of this conversation?
Well, Keith, the person, I regret to share that we never taped any of the workshops, but I think that's the first step, is to tape, perhaps just jump back into us. We have a number of colleges and universities in Rochester, and tape a workshop so that we can then sort of break apart the instructional design from the back end for other career professionals. But Nick did have the opportunity. He sat through a number of workshops, so perhaps he might provide a bit of his experience. I know he's observed a number of them. But the other thing, Keith, just to jump back to your point, is I love your research and your dissertation, and I thought you might just be interested in hearing about two workshops. One was as it relates to practical application. The first is an intro to interviewing, where we break apart the interviewing process and I begin to help students articulate sort of beginning steps of what their strengths are and how to articulate that. And they think about that, and then they come back for a second workshop called advanced interviewing, and the entire thing is practice. So the 45 minutes to an hour, each person kind of takes a role. They have a series of questions that they review. They have an opportunity to quickly, but they've had this sort of scaffolding where they can build upon the previous workshop. And then we've just received incredibly positive feedback, and students who come in hesitant and don't know each other, they have had sort of laid the groundwork of intro to interviewing. They leave, it's so inspiring as the instructor to watch them leave more confident in their answers and the growth between the responses from question 1 to question 8. It's this belief in practice, right? And honestly, it's a real focus on building confidence. So providing positive feedback, each one is taking on different roles, either providing feedback, acting as the applicant or acting as the HR director, reading the questions, practicing out loud, receiving feedback from their peers. It's spectacular to watch these amazing students leave the room with high-fiving each other and feeling like they can make it through their first interview, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would add, from the student's perspective, there are 3 things that are needed. They need to have the aptitude of doing something, but they need to know what to do. And like you said, you need to have that C word. They need to have the confidence and to be able to do it. If your numbers, suggest that they are doing it, then how is this replicatable across different colleges and universities? So how would you go about setting up a program in the first college that says, yeah, come on in? How are you going to set it up? So what are the first couple of things you've got to do? Can anybody speak to that? Just real quickly.
First, listen. What do you need? What's missing here? And what we're starting to find as we're talking to colleges and universities is what I fully expected. We're already doing that. No, you're not, because the numbers are not as good as what Mary and Nick have done. Yes. So nothing wrong with what you're doing. We're giving you a value add, which we can actually do the workshops or courses, whatever is comfortable for you. And we can set it up in terms of your schedule and your agenda, what you need at your school, terms, semesters, whatever it happens to be. And we can train the trainers and then leave and go somewhere else and always come back to consult with you. So it really is a matter of customizing it. And I've taught this kind of work in so many different environments and so many different types of schools for different kinds of students. I know it's fully adaptable. So the first question is, what do you need at your school so that your students, your alumni, and the parents will be happier? We want smiles on their faces because you're delivering value to them, and we can do that for you.
Mary, Nick, thoughts on how do you get that conversation started with the next school?
Nick, any thoughts on it?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can weigh in. I mean, I think that, one of the keys to making any programming work in higher education is collaboration, institutional, not only interdepartmental collaboration, but cross-divisional collaboration. So I think part of what would need to happen would be to get sort of a lay of the land in terms of who's already doing this work and figuring out ways to create systems so that you can pull sort of disparate functions together, such as my office, with Mary's work in the career design department to really make the magic happen. And part of that is like just seeing possibilities, sitting people down, getting a sense of the extent to which they want to give to this program, as well as what their expertise are in contributing to it.
Cool. Mary? Any
Yeah, so
thoughts?
I'm a big fan of data, and I have exceeding high confidence in Nick's ability to both design surveys that are reliable, but also to analyze the data so that the information is useful. So I might even suggest, if colleges and universities are not seeing the outcomes that they would expect, both from either feedback from students and or graduate outcomes, there's tools out there, there's resources out there, there's insight, people who do this work like ourselves, and we can come in a range of different roles and really either Nick to design some processes and or I know you created an entire basically website that allows the students to, it's super easy to sign up, and the descriptions for each of the workshops and the timing, it's very laborious. I think Nick works, I think, 100 hours a week. He wears a lot of hats very successfully at Geneseo, but he's really made it accessible. So leadership workshops are very accessible to students in a range of different topics through his website redesign, but also while he leaves most of the presentation up to other faculty and staff, he does teach a leadership workshop. The data, I think we're confident in it, and we're able to use it to continually improve.
Well, with the limited time we have left, let's talk about one more thing. What do you three do today to make this happen somewhere else? What do you got to do today? And I want to hear from all three of you because all three of you are important.
I've been hitting up everybody I know,
Okay.
calling in favors, and we're starting to get interest.
Okay.
So right before one of the schools that we're looking at is driving distance from where Mary is. So I said you could go visit them in person and pitch it. And I think what's important is that we're, I think, all on the same page in terms of we know we're dealing with conservative culture in academia. So you don't go in there and say, we're going to revolutionize everything in your school. No. We will make this work for you. We will introduce it slowly in any way that's comfortable for you. Maybe it's one workshop to start or an introductory lecture or whatever. And then as time goes on, you'll see that this works and you will create space to expand the program.
Mary, what do you got to do today to get that next school in line?
I need to think about how to get in front of some students and run through a workshop or two and get that videotaped so that we can use it on our website, on Dr. Chaz's website, so that people can begin to see this program in action and appreciate the engagement between the facilitator, the students, each other, and I think really get a sense of what we're offering.
Yeah, get that social proof in. Nick, what are you going to do today?
Yeah, I think what I've committed to Dr. Chaz and Mary is a full articulation of the story from the last 3.5 years in terms of the data and what we've found. We've been doing assessment all along, but I don't think it's been wrapped up into one sort of larger narrative. And I'm at the point now where I've got enough data where we're doing some predictive analyses, which is really, really cool. And I could talk about some of that, but I don't think we have enough time. But in any case, I just want to make sure that I'm providing them with what they need so that they can best tell this story and how it can shape other schools and other young people, because I really think it's quite powerful, having witnessed it myself.
And there's no better way to ending this conversation than to say the data tells the story. Thank you, Dr. Chaz, Mary, and Nick for joining me on Coach's Corner. And for those of you who are watching, I'm going to leave all their contact information in the description of this video. You get in touch with them, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.